Are you an ambitious leader ready to break through limiting beliefs, align with your purpose, and thrive in your career without sacrificing your well-being or postponing your true desires? I'm Diana Ordonez, certified high-performance coach and your host. Each week, we'll dive into actionable insights and research-based strategies to help you unlock clarity, build unshakable confidence, and take courageous action toward a life of impact and fulfillment. If you're ready to overcome fear, embrace growth, and step boldly into your next level, you're in the right place. Let's create a life filled with courage and purpose together. Hello and welcome back, everybody. I am here today with Pete Rosas, who is joining me to talk about his incredible journey and to get some really great insights from his journey. I actually met Pete Rosas when he was doing some financial coaching. Pete Rosas is actually a business banker at Capital One and recently started a business with a partner called Precise Closets and Cabinetry. And so the two are so different. And we'll talk a lot about how, it was the right time to start this business and, how it all gets balanced out in his life. And I know a lot of our listeners struggle with taking these bold steps to start something new. And I think that there's so much to talk about here and how you transitioned through all these different phases of life and how you made decisions and gained clarity and what really serves you as you go through balancing so much in your life. So I met Pete when I had just left my corporate job. I was feeling completely burnt out, like really just, I had like nothing left to give. And I remember that I had been feeling that way for a very long time and ultimately didn't make the decision when it started because I felt like I was kind of enslaved to my paycheck because I had built up a lifestyle, but also because I had a lot of school loans and we had a home. And it got to the point where I knew that this was the right decision. I needed to spend more time with my family. I needed to get back to taking care of my mental health and doing things that really were more aligned with my values. And I knew that we had to just figure out the financial piece. And so I did ultimately start building something of my own, and I stepped down from my corporate role. But in that process, we needed to have more clarity about how we were going to make that all happen. Yes, were confident that we would figure it out, but we weren't sure how yet. And so we knew we needed some help. And so we reached out to Pete, and he gave us some of that clarity. And what I loved about Pete was that he just was very called to serve and help and just had a great heart and guided us through that process, held our hand. And so I want to hear from you because when I reached out to you, I thought we were going to be talking kind of, Dave Ramsey solutions, financial stuff, which we could still touch on. But I learned that you had gone on a whole different path. And so let's talk about that a little bit today.
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me. It's great reconnecting with you after all these years. Wow, it's been about 5 years probably, right? Since we last
Six. I think
connected.
it's about 6 years.
Six
Yeah.
years. Wow, it just flies. So it was an honor to meet you and your husband and get to know you. And you're one of the success stories that I often talk about to this day when I'm speaking with even new clients. I've hung that hat up with financial coaching. It just got so busy. I was, working full time with Capital One as a banker, and then I was doing that nights and weekends. So from like 6 to like 10, I was coaching, and then Saturdays from like 9 to 12, and it was going really well, getting referrals, growing the business, but I just felt burnt out, and I got to a place where I loved what I did, but I stopped looking forward to doing it, if that makes sense. And I was good at it. So I was really good at it. I was helping people and it was hitting all the buttons on, serving others and helping others. And I would see someone start in debt or not budgeting and teaching them how to do that. I'm still involved in a certain sense. Like I lead classes called Financial Peace University at my church. So I do dive into that, and I'm often like called for advice, but I'm not taking on any new clients and not doing this for that, obviously. I'm really doing this to share my story, and maybe someone can learn from it or be inspired and see where this goes.
Awesome. Well, I'm loving having you on and hopefully sharing a lot of your wisdom in that journey. So, how did you know you said you were burnt out, right? How did you know what path to take? When did you decide, well, it's the banking and not I'm going to deeper into the business?
Yeah, well, I figured out that, at first I didn't do the coaching for money. I didn't need the money. I was in a great place financially, so it wasn't out of a desire to make more money. Although I liked the extra money, it was nice. And the tax write-offs and all that was nice, and I took advantage of all that. But it wasn't for money. I did it more for passion, and it was something that I wanted to do first for myself, get the certifications to improve my own financial situation and learn more. But it wasn't for money at first. And then it started growing to a pace where I was making good money, and it wasn't something that I could see I can just do full time either. So I have a strong income full time, and you kind of talk to that, kind of being a slave to that. I don't feel that way. I really love what I do with Capital One. It's been something that I'm really good at too. So I've got one side where I got a full time job that I love. I have flexibility. I have a sense of like passion for as well, where I'm helping business clients, but it's a
Mm,
different level. At one side, I'm helping successful business owners because I'm not working with startup businesses. I'm working with established businesses.
mm,
And on the flip side, I'm working with on the consumer side with people who are in debt. They have money issues. They're not well off that yet, right? They're on their way there, and they just need a plan. But I couldn't scale that business, the financial coaching business, to a place where it could, convert into a full-time career. I was At that time, I was thinking this will be something I'll do part-time forever. And then when I retire, I'll do this because I love it, right? So that's
um,
what I was thinking. I never thought of the financial coaching as a means to grow a business and leave Capital One. And that's not what that was.
yeah. So what I heard there it was you had a much different intention for doing it than when you pursued your career in banking. And we talk about this all the time, like how important it is to be clear on your intention. Where has that theme played out in your career and even in your life, right?
Yeah, so whenever I do something, I really it has to hit certain buttons on me. Like it has to be something I'm passionate about. It has to be for a greater good. It has to be in line with my values. So I wouldn't do anything that's against my values. And that kind of led me to what I'm doing now with the business. So this is kind of way, left field from an opposite direction of financial
Yeah.
coaching. And then when I reconnected with you, it was kind of shocking, right? Because how do you go from financial coaching
Yeah.
to working in the closet and industry or cabinetry industry? But that came about through my partner right now, who has been in industry, and I helped him start his business. And I was coaching him personally and also coaching him through getting his business going with my background with Capital One. And then he just approached me one day and said, "Hey, would you be interested in pursuing this dream of his? Like I'm
Hmm.
now, aligned with his dream. This is his dream that I'm kind of being invited to." And after doing the research and understanding the industry a little better and putting together a business plan, we're starting off like a whole different type of business, which is scalable. I'm more like a advisor and silent partner and an investor, but I'm still engaged, and it feels exciting to do something different where I can grow something. It's hitting different buttons here. Where at first with financial coaching was more like this is my passion, this is my skill set.
Hmm.
Cabinetry is not my skill set, but business and my background at Capital One has really laid the foundation towards being a business owner now, which is quite intriguing.
Yeah. Well, another thing that resonates there is like nothing ever, goes wasted and everything always kind of happens for a reason, right? The pieces all kind of line up. So when I think about that way of thinking, I also think about faith. And you mentioned that you give, courses at your church now that are the Financial Peace University courses that you work with your coaching clients. I wonder what role faith has played in this journey.
Yeah, so like you said, I don't believe in coincidences and lost experiences in life. And I just feel like, I'm a Christian. I have a strong faith in God. I feel like all the failures, the mistakes, the lessons I've learned, my experiences, my career in multiple job settings and um, you know in industries and job titles and all that came into play here with this transition into being a business owner. Because if I hadn't had the business experience, I kind of be lost with this as far as guidance. My partner wouldn't look at me as a value, right? And I had a business that failed, right? So I learned a lot through that. So many years ago. But all that experience that I have, it's really like a stepping stone to where I am today. And certainly like when you're failing a business or it's not fun, right? When you try something new and you fail, that part is not fun. But learning from the failures is what really makes it rewarding. And when you say nothing is lost, our wins are not losses and our losses are not losses, because we can use that as experiences to help us succeed in the future.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't know why this is coming up for me. So I'm always of the mind that it's for a reason too. But one of the things that touched me a lot was you got to meet Juan because we did the coaching with Juan, obviously, before he died. And when he died, you reached out to me and you shared some of your own story and you shared that hope with me, right? That because I have a young daughter and she was younger at the time,
Yeah.
what you went through. And so I actually didn't hear the whole story at the time, right? And it's so many years later, but I want to know, like, how did that play into? Because I did find that God uses everything. And I think you even said that to me that day. And uh, it was unique that I was connected to you not long before he passed and that you were able to offer me that and that you had a heart to reach out and help because I was in a situation I obviously had no idea I would find myself in or had any idea what to do with um and and I didn't know that about you that you had lost a dad at a young age and so how did those experiences shape you and your faith and how you feel guided now and
Yeah, I remember having that conversation now. You're bringing me back to it. And I remember telling you, you know, Romans 8:28 in the Bible says that God uses every situation, all things for his good, right? So even the worst things like death, he can use for good. And that may make no sense when one passed away. Like, how is anything good going to happen from this? And my dad died when I was 6 years old. And what I shared with you that day was that my mom became a widow when I was six, and your daughter was at five.
five? Yeah.
Yeah, so very similar situations where I saw, in hindsight, I saw God's provision through it. I saw that God provided other men in my life, even though there was a void of a dad. He provided other men that will kind of bridge that gap, even though it couldn't do it completely. Like, no one's going to be a better father to your daughter than Juan, right? But he's
Yeah.
not here, so doesn't mean that she can't get that some of it from different areas, right? So for me, growing up in a single parent household, I had a handicapped sister, special needs sister. I had a rebellious older sister. I was the youngest of three, and kind of seeing that, it really, you would think that someone like that couldn't be successful, right? And for a long time, I thought that. I believed it. I believe that because I grew up in Passaic, which is an urban area in New Jersey, because I had no dad, uh, because I had was in a lower income single parent household, that I couldn't achieve greatness, and I had to recondition my mind to say no, that's wrong. God has a great plan for me, and he used that to share with you, for example, to kind of relate to your story. And if we never go through anything hard, how can we relate to people that are going through hard things? And I think God had used me to speak to you that day, right? And to encourage you in that moment. And I wanted to be there for you, especially because I know my mom told me when my father passed away, there were certain people that stepped up and came to her and said, "Hey, let me guide you here." There was different professionals and people that kind of dealt with that before. She had emotional support, but also financial support. And God put in my heart to reach out to you. And first, that's a hard situation to be in. But I wanted you to encourage you because, look at you now, right? If you would have thought that you'd be doing what you're doing now 6 years, 5, 6 years ago when that happened, would
Yeah,
you believe me? Right?
probably not.
Probably not, right? But in that state, we need people to say, "Hey, you're gonna be okay." Right? I know this is tough, but you'll get through it. And I wanted to give you also financial advice because I know when you're in that state of emotion, it's really hard to make logical decisions. Making a hard decision and big decisions when you're emotional wreck leads you to making poor decisions. And I saw that too with my mom from the stories that she shared with me. Like, she needed the support of others to help her make decisions because, when you go to start planning for things and start thinking about your daughter and you start thinking about the house and your bills and then life insurance proceeds, what to do with it, different people are telling you different things. What I loved about that role that I had was I didn't sell any products. So I wasn't in a position to say, well, you should invest all that because I'm a financial advisor, or you put that, pay down your mortgage, because I'm a loan officer. I was there as like a pure consultant saying, hey, this is based on my experience, this is what I would do. And then here's the information and you run with it. But that was, man, you brought me back because I remember that conversation now clearly. And I felt good being in the position to say, you know what, I was kind of there and I was there in a lot of areas and I saw my mom go through a lot of that. But you're gonna be okay.
Yeah, thank you. That was yeah, I hadn't thought of that till just like this moment where it was
Yeah.
like really potent that I mean, think about we were meant to have that conversation, one day. Like, and even just the way we found you, like I feel like in a lot of ways, I'm led, I guess, to speak to certain people, to reach out at certain times for different reasons, kind of like you felt compelled to reach out to me. And I think that that's such I play such a role that in my life that sometimes I have to really like give the attention and value that it deserves because if not for those moments, I wouldn't be where I was. I wouldn't have opportunities that I would have otherwise. I wouldn't have like even receive like when you pray about something, you don't realize that it's going to come to you through other people or whether that be you're feeling hopeless and then you get that encouraging word or you feel lonely and that person at church decides that you need a hug. You know what I mean? Like I always say God sends his people. But I also feel that when you're in need, God sends his people, but also when you have a dream, he places that in your heart and then he like moves things for it to manifest for
Yeah.
you, right?
Cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, and I loved everything you said too, financially, like how emotionally charged finances could, be, or
Right.
how your emotional states could affect your financial decisions. And I think that's why, creating a budget, having a plan, and all that is so important because, and also just knowing. I think one of the biggest things for us was like, you become desperate when you don't know. You don't know where you are and you don't know how you're going to get to where you need to go. The unknown is always very scary. And also that plays back into faith, right? So as you're going into this new business, as a partner, that's totally completely different. I think there is an aspect of faith that plays into this, right? Like, and I also loved what you said about mindset, right? Because there is a limiting belief that you had about where you came from and what kind of environment would
Right.
produce a highly successful person versus, and how that was different from what you believed you were. And so you had to tap into God has something different for me. And so that's connected to faith too, but also like there has to be perspective and mindset, right? I loved what you said about your corporate job and how, you're really happy there, right? And it's not like you need something more, but you have like this belief or this faith that there could be possibilities, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people run from corporate America because they're not happy there, and then it drives them to do something more for
Right.
themselves. I'm coming from a different place. I'm very
Yeah.
happy at my career, and I do really well there. But I'm coming from a place where I'm meeting clients of mine who run successful businesses. They're established businesses. They're, anywhere from 2 to $60 million in revenue, right? So these aren't like startups, like I mentioned before. And the commonality of because I get to meet with the owner directly. When you're in that space, you're working with the owner. When you get above to like 50 million or 100 million above, you're working with like controllers and it may not be the owner or the founder, but in
Hmm.
the space, I'm working with the owner most of the time. And the common theme that I get is I took a risk, right? I was willing to take a risk,
Mhm.
and they may not be smarter than me, and I could tell like a lot of them are not smarter than me, not skilled as well as I could. Not, I could see like not to judge them, but just say, hey, they're not better than me. It's just they had an idea and they had the guts enough to take that step and leap. So fear is a factor there when you're working in corporate America and you have a comfortable salary. To the thought of like going on your own and leaving that is very risky. I'm fortunate enough that I'm not taking that full leap yet. I'm still with Capital One and I still have that cushion. But I am taking risks in certain areas and financially and working extra hours at the night to kind of catch up with the needs of the business and meeting with my partners and having those meetings. So there is a risk factor there where financially I'm taking huge risks, investing, a couple $100,000 into this business, which is scary for someone that is not usually risk averse. But it's just, the way this whole business idea came through fruition and some of the hurdles that we achieved and got through and jumped over and leaped over. I strongly believe that God is providing this opportunity for me to do well and to grow this business and to help grow it. And even though I don't necessarily need it financially, why not? Right? Why not do more? Why not do greater? Why not stretch myself? Why stay comfortable? Right? Why, I could stay comfortable in this career, do well financially, give my wife and kids a great life. And I'm really happy here. But if there's more out there, I don't think that God created me just to kind of coast
Yeah.
and to be comfortable, right?
Yeah.
He created me with a great mind, with talent and skills that are embedded into my DNA that I can only give credit to God because I didn't create certain things myself. I was born to naturally do things really well, and I know that my skill set it could be a value add to this business. So just to kind of circle back around, I don't need it, but why not? And if I can grow this business and create another stream of income, to do greater good and to give more, to do more, to provide for my family more, then why limit myself to a 9 to 5?
Yeah, for sure. You know what stood out to me is like if I could go back and do one thing over again, right? It would be I was so burnt out that I just didn't have the emotional and or energy, the capacity to really do this at the time. And so I think, you could go back 100 times and you probably still do the same thing because you're still operating in the same context that you were in at the time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But if I could go back with the knowledge I have now, I think the one thing that I would really have dug into is to find the joy where I was, right?
Mm,
Because it's one thing to be running from something
hmm.
and another thing to be running towards something.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you're miserable where you are, you will take that misery with you wherever you go, right?
Absolutely.
And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, that happened for me too. Like I did, stepped down. I had all this extra time and all that, but I continued to have this same, I took my problems with me, right? And so, yes, I did have more flexibility to kind of do the growth work that I needed to do,
Mhm.
to set myself up to be able to find fulfillment again wherever I was, that maybe I didn't have the time or the energy to do at the time. I definitely didn't think I did. Now looking back, I probably could have, but when you're in survival mode and you don't have any guidance or any tools or resources, it does have a different it has an impact on how you're gonna behave, right? And so I think one of the big things was and how I advise my clients is find happiness where you are, because happiness is really all about your perspective, and then decide, okay, I'm happy here, but is there still something more that I want somewhere else,
Yeah,
right?
and I think there's a sense of finding happiness by serving, right? Because
Mm.
when we serve others, regardless of if we're getting it back or monetarily or verbally, right, from your boss or your employees, in the sense of like God has placed you in this job or this career for a reason, right? And this, this company where you're working at, um, he's put you there to serve others, right? In whatever capacity it is, whether if you're in sales or administration or laborer. Um, Ultimately, the attitude that I've always had was, I'm working for God, not man. So regardless of what they pay me, regardless of what they say to me or reward me with, I know that whatever position I'm in, I'm working that job as if I'm working for the Lord. And
Yeah.
that attitude has helped me find joy, happiness in my workplace, even though it may be a bad setting. And maybe you have to kind of change that setting if it's that bad, right? Sometimes it takes a tough choice to leave where you're at, because it's not healthy for you. So you have to, I'm not saying just take any abuse that any employer gives you, but there is an attitude of servant, being a servant, that helps you kind of get through the the stuff that you don't like, right? The day-to-day stuff that most people don't like about their jobs.
Yeah, for sure. Like definitely serving uh, is a different perspective. I think in that sense, it does go back to mindset, in that you have a mindset of I'm here to serve as opposed to, this is happening for me as opposed to why me? Like, why is this happening to me? Why is this so hard?
Right.
And I think that once I started actually going on a path of growing and learning and understanding, like because that was the underlying question, how did I get here? And a lot of it was mindset. A lot of it was, realistic thinking versus possibility thinking, like you talked about, is like, why not? It could be more. Why not now? Why not give it a chance? Why not take that risk? And people have seen how I lived, especially after Juan died, and have actually called me a risk taker. And I've never thought anybody would ever call me that in my whole life because I'm such like if I look back, I've always been more of a calculated person. And
Mm,
they'll say, kind of like, yeah, you're like a calculated risk taker, but you still take risks. And the thing is, what changed for me is I thought I was realistic. I thought if I just look at all the things that could go wrong, I was being realistic. And I realized, through the trajectory of that journey was that you choose. You have no idea what's going to happen. You are not a fortune teller. And so you choose if you're going to believe in the potential bad outcomes or the potential good outcomes. And if you are centered in faith and you believe that God makes anything possible, then you can choose to believe that God is making these things work out for your good. And you can see the possibility as opposed to seeing all the potential setbacks. And I understand having a plan and trying to control things, but after Juan died, I realized I am not in control. Like, right? Like we aren't in control. We can try to control all things, and as soon as we hand it to God, he can do wondrous things that we could have never imagined, right?
man. I'm curious to know, maybe do you think that after one died, you became a risk taker because you realized that how life is not certain, right? Or did it change your perspective on life because of his passing that you said, you know what, I have to be more of a risk taker because tomorrow's not guaranteed.
I guess it didn't feel like I was taking risks because there's two things to this. It's the idea of, okay, I'll start by telling this story. I've told it a few times, but right before Juan died, I realized I need help. I'm trying to do my own thing here and I'm not making progress. I want to do something that is meaningful, impactful. And I also have all these ideas and I can't get focused. And I thought I was hiring like a business coach, right? Like I need somebody to, because I need to make money soon. And that's kind of how I was going at it. And I got a coach. And one of the first things that we worked on, it was a CHPC, which is a certified high performance coach, which is what I am now. And she said, you know what? Let's get clarity for you. Give me the three words that describe the best of who you are. And I was like, I'm having a really hard time with this. I wasn't feeling great about myself, honestly, because I had wrapped up my identity around being a product management director, and all I had worked for my whole life was for this moment where I got the number on my salary, and now like I had just walked away from everything. And it was just like, I don't know. I also struggled with a whole slew of other challenges with having ADD and challenges with social anxiety and stuff like that, where I was like, I don't know what the three words are the best of who I am are. And she asked me, you know what? I'll make it easy. Take the 10 closest people to you and ask them to do this exercise and see what you get.
That's good.
And just that week, Juan gets very sick.
Mm.
And it's like I had I had him send me the three words the day he went to the hospital.
Oh,
I didn't, like I didn't know that when I asked him at the beginning of the week. And that was like, he gave me those three words. And then obviously I had to, like, I told my coach, like, I can't, my husband's in the hospital, like, let's postpone. And I ended up not taking coaching back up till like a month. I think I did it a month after his memorial.
mm.
Uh, but if not for that session, I wouldn't have had those three words. And one of those three words, well, the three words were love, courage, and integrity.
Mm.
And I just like clawed onto those words, right? And I asked him, courage, you really think I'm courageous? You really think I'm courageous? And he was like, yeah, so many things that you've done. And he talked about like things that I always perceived as just like the right thing to do,
Yeah.
right? It was like, well, look how you had a home birth. You know how many people would have been scared of that? And it was just like, it was just the right thing to do. Like I understood that I wanted my daughter to have like the best possible start, and that was the best way to do it. And it just seemed like the right thing to do. And he had like some other examples, and it shifted my perspective of how I saw myself. And to me, a lot of the things that I did were with the intention of stepping into courage.
Mm.
It was like that. But the other part of that, yeah, when you see your husband perfectly healthy, exercising, eating right, joyful, completely like living a fulfilling life one day and on a respirator, a week later is just like
It was a shocker for me for sure because I saw Juan very healthy, young and healthy. He was what, 38?
well, probably when you met him when he passed, he was 40.
40, yeah. I mean, that's super young.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and it's that feeling that we just don't know. We just
Yeah.
don't know how much time we have. And so if it could all just be gone in an instant, are all the questions that we're asking ourselves now about whether we should or we shouldn't, do they really matter? Like, does it really matter?
Yeah.
um all the things that we're afraid of if we're just not gonna we might not be here tomorrow. Like we
Right.
should do what we're called to do, what the impact we're called to make. um Take the chances that could potentially give us that sense of purpose and that sense of connectedness that we have. So I've taken what people call risks, but it's all because I hang on to the hope of like I, I think you told me this actually. I'm not sure if it was you, but at some point somebody said to me, God will redeem you and give you back double, what you
Mm.
lost. And it was like, yeah, and how can I possibly receive that if I don't open myself up to possibilities of him doing magical things at magical times, right?
Right, right. Yeah.
Um, and so I don't think of them as risks. I kind of just think of it like anytime I make a decision, is this a decision that I'm making in courage or is it a decision that I'm making in fear? And if it's fear-based, then that's not the one.
Right,
Yeah.
right. When I was coaching, I often find, you have the spender saver, right? The spender wants to live for today, right?
Uh-huh.
And then the saver is thinking, future. So typically you have a saver who is kind of fear-based and they won't take the risk because of, what if I don't have enough later? And then you have the saver who is like, tomorrow's not guaranteed, so I'm going to live it up,
Right.
YOLO.
Yeah.
And I always preach that there has to be a balance there, right? And it translates to business as well, where you can't just say, well, tomorrow's not guaranteed, so I'm just gonna super risky, right? And there has to
Right.
be some level of all right, well, I'm willing to take a risk, but am I putting all on black, right? Am I
Right.
risking it all? And there has to be a balance there where, yeah, you're right. You can't base decisions on fear, but we have to ask God for wisdom, so that we're making the right decisions, but not always we will. And part of that is failing, um,
Yeah.
and learning from that, like I mentioned before. And
Yeah, for sure.
if you're afraid to make mistakes, it's really hard to grow in that kind of state of mind. Like if you're not going to make any decisions because, well, what if that goes wrong? What if it goes right? It
Mm-hmm.
just has to
Mm-hmm.
be the best advice that I've always heard from and given to when it comes to taking risk is, can I live with the outcome if this fails? Right? Let's play the story out. And let's say I start this business and I lose, it just doesn't go well. And I lose all my investment and I lose all that time. Can I live with that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Would it be comfortable? No, but could I live and cope with it? And if the answer is yes, then that's a risk that I'm willing to take. If it's the answer is like, well, my family's gonna lose their house and I'm gonna be out and homeless and no, maybe I won't take that risk, right? But I think playing the story out helps with things. You know what? If the worst case scenario is that, I can live with that. Let's do it. Let's try it.
Yeah. And there's two things that I would probably say. It's like one is, okay, when you have those fears, I do ask, like,
Yeah.
what if? what if it happens? What would you do
Right.
next? And then the
Right.
second part is you will figure it out. I think part of the time when we get caught up in that fearful story is like we think we won't be able to handle it.
Right.
And when you ask, well, okay, what if they fire you? You know, what if you lose this secure job and you go to another job that's much more fulfilling and the dream job that you always wanted and you actually got it, and then they fired you a year in? What if that happens?
Right.
What
Right.
then? And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I guess I would just start looking for another job. Yeah. And then you would have the experience of your dream job already at least a
Exactly.
year under your belt. It's
Right.
like
Right.
we do have resources to figure it out. And most of the time we get caught up in like, what if this might happen? It's because we start to lose a sense that we could like find a way out of any situation. Like
Right.
we have that trust, not just in ourselves, but like you said, in God. God,
Mm.
like I'm sure everyone listening at some point or another has had an experience where they never thought in a million years that something was going to work out for like for them or that would have happened like
Sure.
randomly. That seems random, right? Like, can you believe this happened to me? And why wouldn't it happen again?
Very
Right?
true. Good
Why
point.
wouldn't Yeah. So, and the failures, like you said, it's like even the failures are for a reason. If you hadn't learned that lesson, you wouldn't be in a position to receive what's coming because maybe you
Absolutely.
wouldn't know how to keep it, or maybe you wouldn't know, what you learned there that allowed you to be successful in the next phase.
Right.
It's so true what you're saying. I love that. And, you know, when you talk about your talent, skills, and abilities being God-given, I do believe we're all uniquely designed by our creator. And so like you said, it puts you in unique spaces that you wouldn't have been otherwise, right?
True.
The fact that you have these skills puts you in a space where now you can influence a whole different circle of people
Yeah.
than I would be able to influence because
Absolutely.
I'm not found in those circles. And that calling that you feel where, wow, this came easily to me, this is interesting to me, and it isn't for other people, it's because those are the unique spaces where you're made to make an impact. I think that's all so
Yeah,
powerful
yeah.
to
I
lean
think a
into.
good question for everyone to ask themselves is what comes natural to you? Like what's something that's like really natural to you and you enjoy doing?
Mhm.
What do you like thrive on? Is it helping people? Is it technical? Is it I don't know. And if you're able to solve a problem, those are that's a great skill to have. So if what you're good at solves problems, you can make a lot of money with that. And that's what I've always thought about. Like, what are my God-given gifts? What am I really good at? What did I learn that I do really well? And how can I apply that to help people with the attitude of, and that's how the financial coaching started. But even in this business is really helping my partner, where my partner and I have a good marriage because my skills are his weaknesses and his skills are mine. So when we come together, we're it's like a marriage where you're typically you're attracted to the opposite, but you together as a couple can achieve more than you could alone.
Yeah.
And I think that's what God intended with marriage. But if you look at businesses and partnerships, it's kind of the same. We have to learn how to communicate with each other. Not everything's going to be great, but using your skills and seeing how can I use this to kind of build something is a great way to start a business or an idea of helping others and monetizing that somehow. And that's okay, right? It's okay to monetize your gifts as long as you're doing it for the right reasons. And in addition to that, when I started this business, I realized how much risk it was going to take, how much finances it was going to take. And I asked God clearly, I said, God, if this is not of you, take it away. Like, I don't want
Mm.
anything to do with this business if it's not in line with your plan. And I asked him to give me signs, give me visions, give me dreams, give me just close those doors. Like if I'm leaning just on my strength, and not yours, then let me fail before I start, right? Don't even allow me to open this business. And what's interesting is that God proved it over and over with different situations. On from where we this started 2 years ago. So this idea became, an idea 2 years ago, and now we're like opening in 2 weeks. So it's kind of crazy all the stuff that we went through in that journey alone. But I also look back and say, wow, God confirmed that He wants me here. And the only way I could have done that is if I came to Him first and I prioritized in my life.
Yes. Yes. So, just to piggyback on some of what you said, but I also want to eventually get to like, how did you know it was from him and how do you connect with that? But just quickly before I heard you say like, um, partnership being about being able to leverage each other's strengths. But I also heard you say that in different words when you talked about the spender versus the saver. The funny thing about that is, if you recall, um, Juan was the spender,
Right. Right.
and I was the saver. So that gives you insight too about, where our mindsets are at, or where I tend to be. And so to
Right.
call me the risk taker was a surprise.
Right.
And for me, when you say to ask to make sure that it's centered on God's purposes for your life, one of the questions I asked myself, because it's not like I take random risks, and it's not like for me, courage. I've gotten to the point where I realize for me what courage is a deep sense of love for either someone else, myself, or God. So
Mm.
it's either a step into, I love my daughter so much, right? That I want this for her, that I need to, like, there's every part of my being says that I want to do this. I need
Yeah.
to do this, right? There's like that love for yourself where you're like, hey, this is eating me up. I can't keep staying in this situation. I have to have some compassion and love and empathy for my situation. I need to
Right.
change this. And then there's the last part, which I think actually it ties it all together, right? Love others as you would love yourself. And the other thing he says is to love God, right? And when I tap into that, it's like stepping into obedience, right? When you hear that voice of conviction, to walk in obedience and to tap into that desire to love God in that way, to step into courage, right? And if it's not one of those three things, if it's some other risk, it's like no, it's a no.
Right. Right. That's a deal breaker. Yeah. When I think
Yeah.
about courage too, I've learned that courage is not doing something in spite of fear, right? Oftentimes, courage is doing your duty with,
Mm.
right? Just like it's not,
Hmm.
people that are courageous are often afraid, but they do it anyway. It's
Hmm.
really doing your duty,
Mm.
in spite of the fear that's in you, but you're not allowing that fear to stop you doing what God has called you to do. So, I think we all have a duty on this earth while we're alive, and
Yeah.
doing that duty is going to is going to require you to have a certain level of courage, even though you're feeling fear,
Yeah.
and allowing you that fear not to take over is crucial. I heard a long time ago, an acronym for fear is false evidence appearing real.
Appearing
And I
real.
have to
Yeah.
remind myself that it's not real sometimes. Like the fear that I'm facing and I put in my mind, I've kind of created that. Maybe because of past experience of failing before, not, excuse me, not taking risk because it didn't work before. Oftentimes, even in my marriage or with my kids, maybe it was I was, I didn't do things right, and then trying that again takes courage because
Mm.
maybe I was turned down or I was rejected, and now I
Hmm.
don't want to feel that rejection anymore. So it's gonna prohibit me to take that risk again and be courageous. So oftentimes I got to remind myself that the fear that I'm facing, it's normal. Um,
Hmm.
but if this is my duty, whether
Yeah.
it's you being a wife, husband, mother, employee, manager, business owner, if this is my duty in whatever setting you're in, I can't let fear stop me from doing what I need to do. I have
Yeah,
to fight through that and ask God for courage to step through that.
absolutely. I love that. I hadn't put in those words before, but like that feeling of the right thing to do. Yeah, it's that feeling of it's my duty to do
Right.
it.
Yeah.
And then false evidence appearing real too, because I always say like what you focus on is going to impact how you feel, and how you feel is going to impact whether you take action or not. And that focus on all the times that it did fail, or all the things that could go wrong, will impact if
Mm.
you feel fear. And yeah, the fear won't go away, but the volume will be higher on the hope, on the love, on the integrity that you want to have. The volume will be higher because the focus will be there, and that's what kind of moves you through it. You
Yes.
know, one of the things after Juan died that I did was I felt very moved to tell his story. And Univision reached out to me, and they wanted me to go on live to talk about the story. And because I also became a part of a widows group of COVID widows, because it was unusual for you to become a young COVID widow,
Right.
because everybody thought it was only older people, or people with pre-existing conditions that had passed due to COVID, and that was clearly not the case.
Right.
And so I wanted to talk about his story because I thought it was such a dark time. There was so much fear everywhere, and that I know that that wouldn't have been what he would have wanted. Like he lived his life in such a like joyful way, and oh, he would like even me days before, somebody had messaged him and he said tomorrow will be a better day. Like that was just how he lived, and so I didn't want to go on this live television recording because, like I said, I had social anxiety, I had presentation anxiety. I had to
Yeah.
present a lot at work though.
Right.
And like you said, even at work, you have a duty, right? And so there were many times I had to present, and I had to and people didn't think that I had any issues with this, because what I realized going into this Zoom call with Univision, where I had to do it in Spanish, and I am fluent in Spanish, very much so, but it's very difficult compared to my fluency in English to talk
Right.
about certain things that I don't always talk about, right? So I cried my eyes out before and after. I had
Mhm.
so much overwhelm of anxiety, and just um I realized in that moment, because somebody called me right after and said, "You did so great. You look so poised and confident and all these things." And I'm just like, you know what? There are so many times that I'm sure that I thought somebody was just like a natural at something, or this was easy or came to them so easily. And that's what people are thinking about me. And I don't know, I didn't know what happened behind the scenes for that person. Just like that person didn't know what was happening behind the scenes for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. That's
And
wild.
it's just like it hit me in that moment. Like we will always be like having to step into courage um with that fear. Like people aren't fearless. They're just doing it anyway, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Do you have, is that on YouTube or somewhere that we can see?
Yeah, I mean, I could send you the link to that. Yeah.
I'd love to
I
see
did
that.
a few pieces actually with NBC, and Yahoo News did a piece, and I had to get on that. And I probably would critique it a lot now, but it was the fact that I, I had a deeper purpose for doing it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
therefore it didn't matter. I would have never volunteered to
Mm.
do certain things that I did after he died. Like once he got to the hospital, actually, and I think you got on these, I started going on Facebook Live every night at like 9 p.m. after putting
Yes, I
my daughter
remember.
to bed. And I would worship and pray with people on there. But
Yeah.
before that, I barely even posted on social media,
Right.
much less ever wanted to get on any live anything, right?
Yeah.
But it was like for him, for that, deeper purpose, it just felt like the right thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and now I'm on a podcast, which also is like bizarre, but it started there. And so I think it's true that you have to step into um the courage with the knowing that it's your duty, and
Yeah.
God, give me the strength, give me the wisdom, give me the words, um give me the courage.
Often what happens, fear is connected also to fearing or overconsumption of what others think of you.
Yeah,
So
right.
that's connected there. I heard a story. I forget where I heard this from, but there's a story of a lady who who they did an experiment, and
Mm.
actually they painted a scar on her face, and they said, "I want you to go into this room, and I want you to just come back and tell us what you felt from others after having this scar on your face." So what they didn't tell her was that they erased the scar before
A
she went in
feeling.
the room. So she's thinking she has a scar on her face, and she walks into this room, and she gets out. And she goes, "They were so judgmental. They couldn't stop looking at my scar. It made me feel uncomfortable. I
Wow.
felt rejected. I felt shamed. And all this she created in her head because
Right.
she thought she had a scar. And what I got from that was, what are the things that we create in our own minds that hold us back, right?
Oh my
And
God.
what are we, what, we're so consumed about what other people think of us that I think what happened with you was you got to a point where you didn't care what people thought of you. You were there to pray for Juan and creating those Facebook posts and those lives because you weren't so conscious of what people thought about your voice or how you looked or what you were wearing. You
Yeah.
were just consumed with, I need to pray for Juan. I need as many people to pray with me for
Yeah.
Juan. And I don't care what people think about me because that is, Juan is here and that thought is right here. But
Yeah.
oftentimes we flip and reverse that and we allow our own minds to prohibit what we can do because we're so consumed and concerned about what other people think.
Oh, that's so powerful. And it also touches on one other thing that I work on with clients is in all honesty, and this actually proves that whatever you think people are judging you for is actually what you're judging you for. It has nothing to
Exactly.
do with them at all.
Right. You're making it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, you're
Most of
judging yourself for it.
it.
You believe that about yourself. So let's work on that.
Exactly. That's so good. So good. Well said.
Thank you for sharing that story. It just like proves it. It's people because sometimes people are like, no. In fact, I went through that in coaching. Where like, you know, in some ways, if you're letting that affect you, it's because you believe that about you. I'm like, me? I don't believe that. It's like,
Right.
and then the more you dig in, the more work you do, you realize, you know what? Yeah, I guess there's some truth to that. I am judging myself that way.
And then
Even
we,
not just that, like how we judge others is also really how we're judging ourselves. And so it goes back to grace at the end of it is like God's grace for us is what we extend to others and what we lean
right.
into for ourselves.
Yeah, and then that also taps into doubt, am I good enough? Am I able to do it? Do I have what it takes? Oftentimes our self-talk can be very negative.
Yeah, for sure.
You're not good enough. You could never be successful in that. Who are you to try to do this, right? And that prohibits us because we start believing those self-talks. We're very careful what you tell yourself and what you believe. And more of a reason why, listen, I don't know what your audience is, where they're at with religion and God,
Right.
but the reason why I have to be in God's word daily is because I have to remind myself of the truth. Because the world will tell me lies all day, and I'll tell myself lies all day. But if I'm embedded in God's word and He's telling me that I am His child and I'm created for greatness and I'm made in His image and that He crafted me in my mother's womb, right? He knitted me with like a crochet and with my DNA and created something beautiful. And He created me for greatness. Now I'm like, wow, God, like I need to live that out now because that's the life that He intended for me. What happens is that we're created for greatness, but then we get in our own way in the sense that life happens to us, and then now we're letting the world define who we are rather than God. And when we align ourselves with the vision and the purpose and plans that God has for us, I'm not there yet. um, I'm on my way there, but I'm not there completely, and I'm continuing to grow. And I ask God, guide me because I don't want to be molded by this world. I want to be molded by Him.
Yeah.
And I don't want to create this thing because of my own thinking, but I want to be in tune with the purpose and plans He has for me. And that's the only way to do that is really by reading His Word and believing it, and then just living it out.
Yeah. So you brought it full circle, which was my other question was like how are you um making sure that you still listen? And it sounds like spending time in the Word is definitely the way you do that.
Yeah, listen, one of the things I learned, you know, I, 2013, I lost 45 pounds. I went on this journey to lose weight. But what I did was I disregarded everything else, disregarded my family, disregarded God. It was all about that. I consumed myself with losing weight.
Mm.
And I lost weight and I looked great on the outside, but on the inside, I was in pain. I was hurting. I started getting anxiety. And I learned that I have to prioritize my life with what's most important first. And I'm not saying your health is not important, but it's not most important.
Mhm.
And the way I structure my day is by making sure that I put God first.
Mm.
And what that looks like is a time of worship, one song with a prayer for the Holy Spirit to come and be with me in my listening room that I call. And then I go into a word, I journal a little bit, and I end in prayer, starting with praying for others, and then I end with myself. And that's a routine that I have. And then I work out. So I had to learn that I can still work
Mhm.
out, I can still eat
Good.
right, but I have to prioritize that. And the priority it really is God first, my wife second, my kids third, and then my vocation
Yeah.
in that order. Not saying that you're going to spend 40 hours with my wife every week, right? My kids, because it's not really bent on time. Like right now, I'm working 60 to 80 hours because of this business, right? Right now, it's a season. But not going to not read the word and spend time with God because of that. That's still a priority. And I'm still working out. I'm just, doing other things. And I'm at a space where my kids are a little older, so I can they don't need me as much. So I can kind of scale back there. But now my time with my kids is very intentional. I'm not like just watching TV with them and
Mhm.
calling that quality time. I'm taking
Right.
them on dates. I'm speaking with them. I'm talking with them and engaging with them. So even though it's less quantity of time, the quality is what I've been more keen on because I just can't lose that. I can't build a business and lose my family. I can't build a business and have a great career and lose my relationship with God. It makes no sense to have money and not and no peace, right? It makes no sense to have money and no health, right? So there's a balance in that. And what I've had to learn is how to say no to certain things and set boundaries where in the past I would have said yes to.
Oh, so true. So good. So good what you're saying. It is all about like setting your priorities in the right way and then what's the most important thing and then keep the most important thing the most important thing.
Yeah.
Definitely one of the things that I struggled with when I was in corporate was setting those boundaries. Is
Mhm.
like if I just work more, I'll catch up. If I just work more, it'll get better. If it's like and I let so many things suffer because of it. Because I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know how to say no to the email or say no to the phone call or say no to, not finishing tonight. Like it'll still be there tomorrow. Like just what's more important? And I think a big portion of that is like an emotional regulation, problem where it's like it feels like life or death. And I think in those moments too is like tapping into that connection to God
Yeah.
and remembering like He's got you. You don't have to like do all of this to keep this worldly thing. Like you have God's protection and setting boundaries is just a hard thing even as a believer because you think you're being the nice person by saying yes to everything. You think you're being the godly person by saying yes to everything. Um, but like you've said before, and like, we've said on the podcast before, is like every yes to something is a no to something else, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. If you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else, and is that if it's not priority, then you're answering the wrong questions. So it's hard though, because things that you could say no to may be good.
Right.
Like I was asked recently to be on a board on a board of director um my church, and as much as I wanted to do that, I had to say no for this time. It was
Right.
more like a not yet because it's something I'll do in the future, but deep inside of me I wanted to do it. I felt like wow, like I can add so much, give so much value to them and be an asset to them, and the church will do better and they'll, whatever, and like kind of stroking my own ego in a sense. But at the same time I had to step back and say I just don't have the time right now, and it's not the right season for that. But sometimes we do have to say no to good things um,
Yeah.
in order to do what's best.
Well, what I do want to challenge you on it, and I know this about you anyway, so I think you're gonna have an insightful response for people that are struggling with something similar. It's like you said, I just don't have the time for that. A lot of times people use that sentence as an excuse to not do things that they
True.
really could be doing and maybe want to be doing, but it's a nice cop out
Mm.
for not getting out of your comfort zone.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Um, so how do you know when it's a cop out versus when it's not that you don't have the time, it's that you want to make time for other things that are more important to you? Like, how do you make sure you're moving away from that victim mode to the empowered mode? Because it
Yeah.
is something that you hear all the time. I don't have
Mm.
time to work out. I don't have time to eat healthy. I don't have time to pursue my side hustle or my passion or play the guitar or dance. For me, I never made it to dance class because I don't have time for that, right? Like, and those things are important too. And so how do you make time and how do you
I I
know?
often relate it to budgeting. I kind of bring it back to the
Oh,
finances.
yes.
When you're budgeting, if you tried, I'll give you an example like tithing or giving or however you want to, give your portion. If you spent all your money or paid all your bills and did all the extra stuff first and then say whatever's left over I'll give to God, or whatever left over I'll give, as a donation to whatever you want to, to donate, oftentimes you won't have anything at the left, right? So, but if I prioritize what's most important, if that's really important to me, and I want to give and I want to tithe, if I tithe first and I figure out how to live on a 90%, it's a different attitude.
Yeah.
You'll figure out how to live on 90%.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with life. I can easily say, well, I got a full-time career. I'm starting this business. I don't have time for God. I don't have time to work
Hmm.
out. I don't have
Mm.
time for date nights. I don't have time to spend with my kids because I have all this, business to run and extra hours, and I'm working late nights.
Mm.
But if I prioritize what's most important, and then, the overflow doesn't make sense in a lot of things because like the cap is full. If I put anything more, the water's spilling out of the cup, right? But the way God sees is that he he wants you to have more in abundance because the overflow will provide for others and allow you to serve. But in a sense of talking about time management, um, we have to make sure that our we're doing what's our priority first. Like there's a book called Eat the Frog.
Ah, yes, I have it. I have it somewhere
And
here.
it's you have it there? Yeah. So it's a great
Oh, I
book.
have the workbook actually.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. So eat that frog is really about doing the hard things first.
Yes.
Because if you check your emails, drink coffee when you start, and then leave the most important things for the end of the day, they usually don't get done. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the same sense of let me do the hard things first. The hard things are probably the most important things. And if we can prioritize those things, then everything else will fall into place.
Yes. The thing about budgeting too is like I was one of those people that felt like, oh, it's so constricting and all that stuff. And when you talked about, well, you only make a certain amount of money,
Yeah.
right? And deciding up front where you're going to spend it. Then when you spend it, you feel good that you intended to spend it. It's like I want to spend this amount on, you know, going out to eat. It's not like a surprise. It's like you are still doing the things that you want to do. You're
Yeah.
just allotting the time. Well, we're talking about time management, but in budgeting, it's you're allotting the money that you decided ahead of time that you're going to spend there. In time, it's the same thing. You get 24 hours in the day. You are more empowered to say, I'm going to play the guitar, I'm going to dance, I'm going to exercise. I'm going to whatever at this time
Right.
and that time only. And then you've already planned for it. You've therefore the other priorities, when you're working on those, you've already planned for that too. And otherwise you're kind of like just always in this survival mode because you're scared. You're scared you're going to run out of time. You don't know where your time is going, right? You don't, similar to money, you're scared. You don't know where the money is going. If you
Right.
plan to spend it, you're planning to do, things that you want to do with your money, but you do so in a way that is, much more, you're holding yourself much more accountable to what you say your values are. Because tell me where you spend your money, tell me where you spend your time, and I will tell you what your values are, right?
Right. Right. So
Yeah.
true.
So I love this for you. I love that you're taking a step in courage and pursuing something new. I know that you had to do some things also to be get in place as you set priorities and all that. And I think one of the things that I heard from you was like, how do you decide to to make a decision that's going to kind of shift your lifestyle in a big way? Like, what are some of the things that you did?
Um, how do I decide if I'm going
Like,
to
what are some of the things that you did to prepare to make a decision like that? Like, how did you prepare your family? How did you prepare your
okay.
finances? How did you prepare mentally for it? Things like that.
Yeah, so first it was having, family meetings saying, hey, first speaking with my wife and saying, hey, this is something that I feel God has put in my heart to pursue this business, and this is what it's going to take. It's going to take some time, time, just like as if you decide to further your career and you had to go to school X amount of times a week and nights and weekends to further your career. It's kind of similar. Like I'm taking time to invest into this business, and it's going to be some nights and weekends that are going to be busy with this and making sure that she's good with that first, right? Because I can't make that decision on my own. Once I got my wife on board, we had a family meeting and saying, hey, this is what dad's doing. It's gonna be a little different. I need you guys to help. My kids are 13 and 14 now, so they're at the age where they can help out with like, laundry and dishes and dishwasher and all that. So we just kind of tell them, say, hey, we're gonna expect you to step up. Some of the things that I was doing before, I can't do anymore. I just won't have the time to do those. So I'm deciding to say no to those so I can say yes to this business and have the time for that and allocate it there. And then further there, I had to look at my life and schedule and saying, all right, what am I doing right now that I'm saying yes to that I need to say no to in order to have the time to do this business? And it came to cutting certain things out. I'm a pickleball fanatic, so I
Hmm.
have to now step back a little bit and play less, even though I get great joy out of it. It's fun. I'm not playing 2 to 3 times or 4 times a week anymore. I'm playing 1 or 2 times. So kind of
Hmm.
setting that schedule. You
But I love
know,
that you didn't cut it out.
no, no. I listen. At the end of the day, like you still have to make room for things that bring you. You can't just stop everything, right? So you still have to make room for those things that bring you joy, and you need your outlet. If there's something that really, like I have friends that play golf, right? And they spend hours and hours playing golf, and so I've heard stories of people have to cut that down a little bit because it's just so time consuming. As much as they love it, but with pickleball, I can sneak away for 2 hours, and it's not going to break my schedule. And my wife is supportive enough to understand that I kind of need that just to kind of, with all the stress and my mind being used all day and late hours, I need to kind of, just relieve that somehow.
Well, it's so good for you. Like the if you follow Dr. Amen, he talks about the benefits of
Racket
racket
sports.
sports.
Yeah,
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 so
yeah.
good for your brain. It's similar to like dance, anything that kind of puts you in flow is great. Also using your body to like you release energy, but I've heard such great things about racket sports, like kind of really engaging your brain in a different way. And all of these things are actually helping you achieve the success you want anyway. Like you think that sitting at a desk all day for 20 hours is going to meet the goals. And yet, if you were to go outside, walk for 20 minutes in nature, you would come back so much more invigorated with many more creative ideas, you know, much more innovative and collaborative than if you stayed at your desk, right? Like even the racquetball, engaging your brain in these new ways is necessary to run an effective business, right?
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah, love that. I haven't jumped on the pickleball train yet, but
Oh, you
it's
should.
blowing up.
It's great. It's great. It is everywhere. But yeah, I mean, I've had to look at my schedule and say, for another example, I used to wash my own clothes.
Mhm.
And that for $20, I
Right.
can earn that back every week. I'm going to pay it, so that's 2 hours that I'm not doing anymore that I paid someone $10 an hour to do.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
Yeah.
So buying back your time is wise. Just got to be careful that, obviously you got to fit in your budget
Right.
and make room for it. But it's one of the things that I said, you know what? I got to stop doing that because I noticed it was just time consuming and I rather invest that time into other things.
I love that. It's so true. And it's Dan Martell that wrote that book, Buy Back Your Time, I think it's
Oh,
called.
there you go. Yeah, that's a great
Yeah.
book. Buy back your
Yeah,
time.
so I firmly believe in any time that you say I can't do something because I don't have time or I can't do something, period. It's always like really shift to how. How could I? Even if you have a bunch of bad ideas, right? And the same thing is like, how could I make more time for this business? And your
Mhm.
brain is always trying to solve that. And so, how could I? Well, do I really need to do this? Like, do I really need to do that? Or if you think about the book, The One Thing, it's like, what would be the one thing that makes everything else easier or no longer necessary?
Mhm.
Well, if you wrote down everything you did in a day and one of those things was laundry, laundry is no longer necessary if I'm just going to invest a few, more dollars. I think our time is really, really valuable.
Yeah, for sure. For
Yeah,
sure.
and back to if you thought about like we never know when we're going to go, that even increases its value even more. You never get it back. You never get it back.
Yeah, yeah. If you're listening to this podcast and you have a full-time job or you're, struggling with time management, you certainly have to look at ways to make things more efficient and buy back your time, as the book title is. But it's something that it's a mind shift because you're going from kind of like an employee mind shift to an entrepreneur mind. And
Yeah.
what you did, to kind of save money as an entrepreneur may not work to build a business, right? Or start a company or start a, consulting business, whatever it is, right?
Right.
So it's a mind shift game, and you
Yeah.
have to really self-reflect and say, all right, I have to think different now and do things different.
Yeah.
And am I willing to adjust?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, the goal that scares you is the one that requires that you become a whole different person.
Sure.
Yeah. What I also liked about what you said is that you basically set a vision for the business, like we're gonna grow this thing. This is how it's going to change our lives, right? You set that vision and then you got everybody on board. You communicated what the vision was, and you had everybody kind of feel good about working towards a vision together, as opposed to, you know, like just dumping. It's like, hey, let's work all work together towards something bigger. And it is like I think about when Juan and I went back to school. Juan actually had a lot of limiting beliefs early on about why he couldn't go to college, right? And he went back to school when he was like 30, like he was in his 30s. Mia was born in 2015, and that was the year that he graduated.
Wow.
Yeah. So if that's 2015 is five, so he was 35 when he graduated. He started at 31, I guess. And he graduated in 4 years. 18-year-olds that don't graduate in 4 years.
Right, right, right,
He was working full time. And he was like working 6 to 3 and going to school at night. And he just like once he shifted kind of like you, like a person like me, and I'm not good at it and all this. Once he shifted from that to hey, what do you really love? What do you really love to do? And he was like, he always knew he loved computers. And so he had, his very first time putting aside money to buy a computer, like it was like everything. And he built it and all that. So once he got clear on, you know what, I really want to pursue
yeah,
information security. And then it was like, no matter where he looked, they all wanted a bachelor's degree, and it was what was standing in his way. And once he like moved away from the victim of like he never even looked at it that way, like I want this, I can't have it because I don't have a degree. It was more like, okay, if that's what they require, let's do
yeah,
this. And at the same time I was going back to school for grad school. It was like we were both working full time, going to school, and we eventually ended up planning a wedding, and we bought a house and all that. And it's like I look back and I was like, how do we have all that time? And it's like, right? Sometimes you do look back. I mean, it's different now a little bit because we I have my daughter.
right.
But it's about like having that big picture vision, eliminating those limiting beliefs,
Yeah,
and knowing that, and like enrolling that your partner, your people on pursuing it together. And he graduated in May. Mia was born in April. And like we just the skin of our
just made
teeth.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's you really have to be mindful where you spend your time. I had recently I had to cut off social media.
Yeah.
I was getting into that scrolling mode,
Right.
and if you monetize the time I was on screen, like I just get you get sucked into that really quick, and there's such a like a dopamine hit that you get that brings you back. I remember deleting Facebook, and my thumb had the memory of unlocking and clicking on Facebook right away. And when I deleted it, I was looking for Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah.
It wasn't there anymore. And I was like, wow, I was programmed. I programmed myself to every time I opened my phone and unlocked it, I would go to social media. And I
Yeah.
get stuck in there for 20, 30, sometimes an hour. And I'm like, geez, I can't believe I lost 45 minutes. And then
Yeah.
kind of going back into like, all right, shifting back and adjusting back to my work schedule took time too. So sometimes I will lose the 40 minutes on social media, and it take me another 20 minutes to get back to where I was. So
Right.
I had to cut off that. Maybe it's cutting off TV and shows
Right.
that you're so used to watching.
Right.
I think sometimes we get so caught it, caught up in being entertained by other things that we don't entertain ourselves by doing things that
Right.
we didn't create. So sometimes it takes, if you're going to start something new and create a business and explore different things or go back to school, you may look at your time, and you may have to say no to certain things like TV and social media. Maybe it's temporary just to kind of get you focused, but it certainly helped me, and I don't think I'm going back.
Yeah, it's such a, I mean, it's programmed to do that. It's programmed to get you addicted to it because
Right,
it is a
right,
dopamine rush.
sure.
And you know, that goes back to like habits and how we program our habits. And it's like whatever we repeat, our body is just going to keep wanting to do it. It's like the comfort zone of like, okay, that's our routine. That's what we're going to do. It's so hard to change those things until like you change like your identity really is the deepest way to make a change to your habits. And it's like I think back to even the belief that I'm not the kind of person that's going to be successful in this way. When you shift that belief to I'm a business owner, I'm going to be a security information analyst. Like when you shift it to I am or I am in the process of being, our beliefs shift because it's like I'm this kind of person. I
Yeah,
can't, I'm not going to be doing this. This is not the kind of person I am. I'm the kind of person that now is going to study every night. Because, it did take that for him to um, do things that he didn't used to do. Like he didn't used to study.
yeah.
He was like, I was never good at school, right? Like, and
That's a
so
lie, right? That I'm not good at school.
yeah,
Now you're not
exactly.
gonna go to college because you believe that lie. Yeah.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
it's you know, going back to what you said too, about time management and making time for yourself. You really have to self-reflect and know that um, time is valuable. You can't get back time. Even like when you asked me to say, when you asked me to do this podcast, I had to make a decision. Am I going to say yes or no? And I could have said, well, I can't do it. But in my mind, I said, well, if this can help others and I can add value to someone's life, and this is just a one-time thing. If it was a weekly thing, I probably would have said no, right? But because it's just one moment, and I can work through that, and I won't. It's not something that's going to repeat over week. Then yeah, for sure, I'll say yes to this, and I'm glad we're doing this.
Thank you so much. Like on that note, love that we had this conversation. This has been a gift. I think our listeners will, find so many nuggets in here to like kind of, sink their teeth on, change their perspective,
Good.
pursue that thing that they might be scared to pursue or make that change in their lives that they've been thinking about for a long time. And so has been such a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for making the time, especially at such a busy time in your life.
Busy.
Yeah, and if someone wants to, work with you or reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not coaching anymore. I wish, I was in a space where I can take new clients, but I've stepped away from financial coaching. Really, I'm not looking to get anything out of this. If someone has a question, they can find me on Instagram at Pete Rosas. I also still do have my Instagram page for the financial coaching, which is at Pete Rosas Financial Coach. But listen, I'm not looking to get anything out of this. I
Yeah.
hope someone got something out of this where they can apply to their lives. But I'm happy to answer a question maybe someone has. Maybe they heard something that they want me to
Yeah.
dive deeper in, and I'm happy to be available for that as well.
That's awesome. And if you guys want to redo your closets or your cabinets, it sounds
Yeah,
like you're going to be in business soon. So,
yeah, well, if you're in the New Jersey area, or New York area, that the business is custom closets. We're a fabricator. My partner does the installation part, so we do from soup to nuts, everything custom to do pantries, closets, garages, laundry rooms. And our website's not up yet. We're just starting. But you can find us at Precise Closets and Cabinetry in Hawthorne, and happy to help anyone that calls.
awesome. Thanks so much, Pete. This has been awesome. Uh, I will, be in touch, and I hope that you have the most amazing success in this new venture, and
Yeah.
obviously continue to help businesses at Capital One.
Thanks for having me. It was just a pleasure being here and be able to share time with you and to speak to your audience.
Thanks so much. Thank you for tuning into today's episode of Courage and Purpose. I hope today's insights inspired you to take bold action and align your life and career with what truly matters to you. If you're ready to dive deeper, I invite you to download my free Action Indicator Assessment, a powerful tool to help you uncover what's holding you back and take the next step towards clarity and confidence. Just visit www.lifeonpurpose.coach/action indicator to get started today. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with someone who could use a little extra courage on their journey. Until next time, stay true to your purpose, lead with courage, and keep thriving. I'll see you in the next episode.